Hello. Happy Easter. I guess today is Sunday. Yep. Definitely not always 100% sure what day of the week it is today, but I see we have some people here from New York and from Washington State. Feel free to let me know where you're from in the chat. It's always so cool to see that we have people from all over the world here. That's just, makes my heart go all fluttery. But yeah, so today I wanted to talk you through some of the things that I'm working on. Some of these things are things that are still in kind of observation. Some of these things are things that you're going to see on the blog fairly soon, but I thought I'd kind of give you a little bit of a teaser and show you kind of some of the different iterations I've gone through and talk about some of the different formulation challenges that I faced or I'm currently facing. And I will absolutely take questions as we go, so feel free to kind of throw those into the live chat. See another New York, an Iowa, a Minneapolis where it's snowing today. It snowed here overnight too, so I feel you. From London, from Alberta, hello. All right, so I've got my formulation notebooks here. I've actually got a couple of them because I recently kind of filled this bad boy up and then moved on to another one. So we're going to be straddling two different notebooks, and I did think ahead and go in and tab what we're looking for. So you're not just going to be watching me flipping through going, I swear it was in here somewhere. Oh, we have somebody from Florida where it's very hot. I'm very jealous. From New Zealand. Oh, I love New Zealand. I have a trip planned to New Zealand later this year. I really, really, really hope it goes forward. From Pittsburgh, Wisconsin, Washington State, Los Angeles, British Columbia, St. Louis, Switzerland. Oh, so cool. Indiana, Germany, the Bahamas. Oh, wow. Georgia with a peach emoji. That's so cool. All right. Let's see. Where shall we start? Well, this is a page I have open right now. So let's start talking about some shampoo bars. So this one is a shampoo bar I first made December 14th, 2018. So this one is fairly old. This is not that bar, but it's the same formulation. I made this one on July 17th of last year. And so what's kind of interesting about this bar, it was inspired by a bar that Lush has that has salt in it. I think it's called like scenic or something to that effect. And I was kind of curious, like what would happen if I put salt in a shampoo bar? And so this has 3% just table salt in it, and it also has 4% vegetable glycerin. And what's kind of interesting is that this did all come together eventually, but as I'm looking at my notes here, because I tend to, as I make shampoo bars, I'll set one aside and I'll weigh it as time goes on to see how much water it loses, to kind of figure out where that, you can graph the loss, and obviously like the first little while it's going to be the sharpest drop off, and then it starts to kind of round off, and trying to find where that best point is, where it's like, all right, you want to let it dry at least this long. That's going to be your highest payoff for the amount of water loss versus the amount of time you wait. Keeping in mind that I live somewhere very, very, very dry. My parents live in British Columbia where it's a lot more humid, and bread actually molds there. It doesn't really mold here. I mean, it can for sure, but usually it just gets rock hard. So yeah, very dry here. Anywho, when I made this, and you can probably guess from the shape that I made this in the bath bomb press using the square mold, the mixture itself was very, very, very wet, and it oozed out of the mold. Oops. And then after looking at my notes about how long it kind of took to dry, over the course of from mid-July to the end of September, we lost just about 2 grams of water, and this was like a 65-gram bar. So this bad boy, once it dries, it's gorgeous, but it takes for freaking ever to dry. When you first make it, it's really like quite sticky and moist, and even now in like a very low humidity environment, it's definitely got a little, it doesn't feel totally dry. So I don't know, it's kind of like I've had another one of these that I made at the same time sitting in my shower, and it actually lasts a good long time. I love what it does for my hair. But yeah, I've sort of been debating about sharing this because it's kind of like, here's the shampoo bar. You have to let it dry for a really long time. And one of my concerns is if you live somewhere much more humid than I do, which is anywhere, it might not ever get dry enough to use. So I want to keep kind of playing with this concept, but I do really like this bar. So there's kind of one thing that I'm working on. Yeah, a Lush inspired shampoo bar that has sea salt in it. what else do we have in front of me? Aha. So these are pressed clay bars, and I tried making them 2 different ways. So it's just 100% Multani Mitti clay, which I believe is also it's the same clay that is used in a fresh product where they sell a clay bar and it's like $50, which is a lot. And I was like, I'm not paying. Why would you pay $50 for clay in a bar when you could make clay in a bar? And so I've made some clay bars and shared them on my website before, but I thought, hey, let's try this, pressing them. And so I tried them 2 different ways. Let's see here. So I believe it was this one. I added the water really slowly to the clay and was like working it in. Whereas this one, I started with a defined amount of water and then tried to work as much clay into it as I could. And so originally, I think the bars were fairly similarly sized, used a similar amount of clay, or at least I aimed to, but I couldn't get all the clay into this one, starting with adding clay to water as opposed to adding water to clay. So kind of an interesting comparison there. That's about the only difference. The ingredients are the same, but it was really neat to watch them shrink. So this is from the same mold that this one is from, and the reason it's so much smaller now is because it's dried out like crazy pants, which is kind of cool. But the idea is, that you would get this like a little bit wet under a tap, run it over your face, and then let it dry out between uses so that it doesn't need a preservative. That is what Fresh does with theirs. Theirs doesn't have a preservative either. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. I haven't actually played with these much beyond just sort of watching them dry and shrink as time goes on. And these are from last July as well. Could you put it in a food dehydrator? From Leah, presumably about the shampoo bar I was worried about not drying. Heck, it's worth a try. I guess I'm always trying to make sure that I'm not sharing formulations that force you guys to have a lot of equipment that you might not have, and I don't own a food dehydrator, so I couldn't really test it. But if you wanted to play with things at home, like, heck, give it a go and let me know how it turns out, eh? Let's see here, what's on this tab? Shower squishies. This is something I don't actually have in front of me now because this dates back to the summer of 2018. So this was a Lush experiment, or Lush inspired product, where it's mostly a bunch of cornstarch held together or kind of moistened with some vegetable glycerin and then a touch of fragrance, some pigment, and then some sodium lauryl sulfate acetate to create something kind of like a Play-Doh-y like consistency, but it lathers. So I'm probably going to actually share these pretty soon here because they were really fun and they did end up working quite well. Though I can kind of see from my notes here that I did grow the formulation to include some cocoa butter propylbutane in addition to the sodium lauryl sulfate acetate, and worked on turning up the active surfactant matter as well so that we got more bubbles. But that's kind of fun. It was like foamy bath Play-Doh. What else do we have in here? Oh, yes. Another Lush-inspired thing. Here we are. So the idea here is that this is a self-preserving shower gel. And so they have these on their website, and they're part of their like self-preserving series of formulations. And the really kind of big thing about this is that it contains quite a lot of glycerin. And so the glycerin would be one of the bigger parts of making it self-preserving because it really locks up the water, kind of gives it, keeps it too busy to cause trouble, more or less. And then it also contains a fairly high concentration of sodium lauryl ether sulfate. So that's SLES, or sodium laureth sulfate. The F is ether, shortened down to F. And so that's a anionic surfactant, and then anionic surfactants can also inhibit microbial growth. So this bad boy I made September 6th. It has been living in my shower, so it has been exposed to a lot of temperature changes. It's been exposed to high humidity, though, in the bottle, and it's still fine. Like, it hasn't changed at all, which is really, really cool. So September, that we're looking at 7 months. So this is over 7 months old, which is pretty darn cool. these have really great lather and whatnot, and I'm definitely a fan. So I think I intend on sharing these fairly soon as well. But I thought that was kind of cool. One of the first ones I made, I put way too much dye in, and it's a purpley one. And whenever I use it, I kind of wonder if I'm bleeding because there's just this like dark purpley red dye just going everywhere. It's about the same color as my top here. And it's like, oh, whoops. Yeah, those water soluble dyes, they mean business. Oh, and another Lush one, and there's really not a lot left of this little dude. So this is a solid shower gel, and so I actually got a sample of one from a Lush store, kind of just went in and was interested in it. And then they said, oh, you want a sample? I'm like, sure, I'll give that a try. So what's kind of cool about this is it is a base of propylene glycol and sodium stearate, and that is what makes it solid. And so if you look at a lot of commercially available stick deodorants, that's the base of them as well. You're going to see sodium stearate in there and a good amount of propylene glycol, and usually some like cyclopentasiloxane or something, because it gives it really, really good slip and makes it feel all kinds of lovely on your skin. But yeah, so the base of this is sodium stearate and propylene glycol, and that gives us a solid base. And then the lathery bits come from some surfactants. So I've played with both sodium cocoa sulfate and sodium lauryl sulfonyl acetate, SLSA, and then adding some cocamide propylbetaine as well, and then trying them in different colors. The first one of these that I made, I remember I made it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting, it became solid, this is magic. And then I left it for a weekend, and I came home and it was just like dripping on the cooling rack. So I hadn't incorporated enough of the sodium stearate. So we kind of have ongoing notes here in my book as I work on making them harder and harder, and work on also improving the process for making them. So that'll come out when I do share these, but I ended up actually mostly making these in the oven, which is kind of cool. One of my challenges with these, and why I haven't quite shared it yet, so these are also self-preserving because they contain they're like almost 50% propylene glycol, which is a really strong humectant and actually has some pretty good antibacterial properties, more so than glycerin, or so says Harry's Cosmeticology. Denise asks, propylene glycol is not something you use with us. What's the deal with that ingredient? So propylene glycol and propanediol 1,3 are extremely similar molecules, or extremely similar ingredients. It's just that propanediol 1,3 is sourced from corn, and propylene glycol is sourced from petroleum byproducts. I was using propylene glycol for these experiments because it is so much cheaper than propanediol, and I was going through quite a lot of it. I will, in the future, experiment with using the propanediol instead, so I can kind of tell people, hey, you can use one or the other, or maybe you can't. But yeah, that's kind of the deal there. It's one of those ingredients where there's a really easy natural swap for it, but I do have it because I just, it's a good way to learn about it, to play with it. One of the challenges with these, so sodium stearate, you might recognize that name. So when you saponify coconut oil, you get sodium cocoate. When you saponify tallow, you get sodium tallowate. When you saponify stearic acid, you get sodium stearate. So this has a soap base in it, which is kind of cool, but it does mean that this has a fairly basic pH. Let's see here. I think it was kind of a pH of about 8, just trying to find that in my notes here. And I didn't love that. I didn't love that it was really quite basic. So I've been working on trying to dial the pH down a bit, but also keeping it, okay, no, the pH is pretty high at about 9. Finally found that in my notes. And yeah, that's a little higher than I would like for a skincare product. So yeah, just kind of a thing I'm playing with, because I want it to still be self-preserving, and I still want it to be stable, but I'm kind of curious to see, because with soap, you can't acidify soap. If you add a bunch of acid to soap, it ceases to be soap. I'm just throwing this around with my sort of fussy hands here. So yeah, just trying to play with seeing if I can make this acidic, so it's better for the skin, but also work really, really well. It's a really, really cool cleanser. They do tend to break down quite quickly. It's funny, the lady at Lush who gave me a sample was like, oh, I find that it really breaks down really quickly because they're like really nourishing. And I was like, I don't think that's how that works. I think it breaks down because there's not a lot of like thickener in there. All right, what else do we have? Oh yeah, so more shampoo bars. So this one is a continuation of some experiments that I started in March of 2019, which is working on self-preserving shampoo bars that kind of use their high concentration of anionic surfactants, low moisture content, and the fact that it dries out between uses, trying to use all of that to come together to create a self-preserving shampoo bar. So the experiments that I did in early March were mostly a combination of sodium cocoa isethionate and sodium cocoa sulfate with some kokum butter, some apple cider vinegar, which is a sort of a tip I picked up from Lise Anderson and Rebecca Wright. They have a shampoo bar book, and they put a lot of infused vinegars and things to bring the pH down. And then some apple cider vinegar, and that would have been about it for that first round. And so no preservative, and I tested that for a while, and it never showed any kind of spoilage. So this bad boy now contains 4% rose powder, and it has shifted color quite a lot. It hasn't actually yet been used. I made this early December of last year, so I haven't used it yet. I've just been monitoring it as it dries out. So it kind of, I'm curious to see, will it continue to be self-preserving with something a little bit more challenging in there, some botanical powders. And fun new thing I'm trying. Let's take a look at the chat here. Persephone's pomegranate. I have some propanediol in my Windy Point cart as we speak. Looking forward to learning how to use it. Yeah, so one of the places that I'll often use propanediol is a place where I would use glycerin, but I'm worried about maybe the glycerin being a little bit too sticky. So that can be kind of fun. And you can also look it up in the Humblebee and Me Encyclopedia, and there's some more information about it there. And I'll also, at the bottom of the post, have links to the 8 most recent formulations I've shared using it. Ellen wants to know, what does apple cider vinegar add to soap? So I wouldn't really put apple cider vinegar in soap. What it's kind of going to do is it's going to increase your superfat. So it's going to react with the sodium hydroxide and neutralize it so that there's less of it in the soap batter to saponify the fats. So I wouldn't put vinegar in soap from that kind of theoretical angle, but I also haven't tried it, so what do I know? Hello from New York. I definitely saw some Australia scrolling past as well. Denise says, I have a ton of botanical powders and would love to see more uses of them on your blog. I used to use a lot of them. I haven't in a while, partially just because every time I use a lot of botanical powders, I get a lot of questions about substitutions for them. And that gets to be tricky because botanical powders are very nuanced things. And so you're often trying to replace maybe the color, but also some different sort of jobs and elements and benefits that they bring to a formulation. And that, it's complicated. So I haven't used them as much lately. Let's see here, shampoo bars. Oh yeah. So I've got another one of these from this series of experiments. So a reader got in touch with me and asked if I'd ever considered making a bar that was, I think it was pretty much entirely sodium cocoa isethionate and including some glucoside, one of the glucoside surfactants. So my favorite is caprylyl and caproglucoside. I love it because it is naturally acidic, whereas the rest of them are very basic. And so I didn't do entirely sodium cocoa isethionate because there is a maximum usage rate there of about 50%. And so if you can only have 50% solid surfactant in your bar, if that's the only solid surfactant, it starts to create challenges for making a bar that works. So this is sodium cocoa isethionate and sodium lauryl sulfonyl acetate. And then with now this one doesn't have any clay in it, but then I did another version that has clay in it, and I really, really like the consistency. It gives a really workable, moldable dough. And so one of the things that I was really excited about with this is I was able to use it with my shampoo bar mold, and I'm actually just going to pop over and kick some things and grab it and show you what the challenge of that is. So these are for the bath bomb press, and this is their shampoo bar mold. And so it's an open-sided mold that kind of comes down and does this. Well, it's upside down, but generally speaking, you get the gist. If the thing that you're pressing is really loose, it kind of tends to just fall off. You heap it up and it just goes, and then you have a really hard time pressing it. So you need the thing that you're pressing to have some interest in sticking to itself. And so I've been working on making some shampoo bars that are more like that, that are more sort of doughy like, so that they have some kind of interest in themselves before you squish them together. Because if you made my or looked at the video for my Argan Rose shampoo bars, you really need to basically be able to corner that in something and squish it together. So a lot of the other molds from the bath bomb press are more like this, where you have like a cavity that you can put a bunch of mix in, and then you can slam it down. So you can corner it and press it together, even if it kind of doesn't want to hang out with itself. But these ones with some clay in them really take on this gorgeous, like, clay putty-like consistency, so you can smash them together. And I am in love with the lather from these. Like, oh my gosh. So I've made plenty of sodium cocoisethionate and sodium lauryl sulfate acetate based shampoo bars before. I've never included a glucoside or a non-ionic surfactant in with them, and oh my gosh, does it ever make them awesome. So yeah, keep an eye out for those, but I'm sure a fan. Let's see here. Haley asks, do I have a list of reliable manufacturers? I hesitate buying things online if you've never heard of other people using them. Yeah, that's totally fair. On my website on humblebeeandme.com, one of the links in the main menu is where to buy ingredients. And what I've gone in and done, like, there's a ton of places listed there. What I've gone in and done is I've added a visual distinction and just a little bit of bolding to the places that I've ordered from and had good experiences from. Of course, that's going to be mostly limited to Canada and the United States. There's one in Germany that I ordered from on a trip. There's a couple, I think there's at least one down in New Zealand, but most of them are pretty North America centric, since that's where I live and mostly order from. But most of those places have been recommended to me by readers and whatnot, if they're international ones that I probably wouldn't have otherwise found. So that's a good place to start. Erin asks, what's your take on extracts? I don't know if I feel like the more I learn about extracts, the less I know about them. Lisa Lees does a lot more work with extracts, so I'd really recommend checking her out. AO asks, I just bought some Polysorbate 80, which I try first. I'm thinking a room fragrance spray. My personal thing, I would make a cleansing oil, because those are really, really fun, really simple to make. But if you go look up Polysorbate 80 in the Humblebee and Me encyclopedia, at the bottom of the entry, there will be a list of the 8 most recent formulations I shared using it. And so that should give you some good starting points. Yara wants to know about the best anti-aging facial serum recipe you can make, and you are in luck, Yara. I have one coming out towards the end of the month, and I think you're going to love it. Hello, Heather in California. Let's see here. All right, I think that's all I see for questions on the screen, so I'm going to move on to another thing. Bath salts. So here we go. So bath salts, funnily enough, are not a thing I've really ever spent much time on. And then as part of being able to speak at the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild conference this year, which unfortunately has now been canceled, but I needed to pass their certification thing, and one of the things you had to formulate as part of their certification thing was bath salts. And so I started learning more about bath salts. And so this is one that I made back in February. So this is almost exactly two months old at this point in time. Yeah, it's April. That's the 4th month. Man, guys, what day is it? March 322nd. So the thing that I'm mostly monitoring this for is clumping. I don't want it to clump. And so I used a couple new to me ingredients in these bath salts. I used some dendritic salts and some Natrasorb, which is a modified tapioca starch, I believe, that helps prevent clumping and have scent last longer along with the dendritic salts. So this is mostly Epsom salts, actually, small amount of dendritic salts and Natrasorb, and then there's some fragrance, some Polysorbate 80 to make sure that it doesn't leave a fragrance ring in your tub. And then I put in a little bit of pink Himalayan salt and learned very, very quickly that large grain salts take so long to dissolve in your bath. And I put a bunch of this in my tub. I was like, oh boy, I'm going to have myself a nice bath, and sat down, and it was like I was sitting on the bottom of a river with a bunch of gravel sticking into my butt as I waited for the large grade pink sea salt to dissolve. So as pretty as it is, not recommended. Large grain sea salt, yeah, that's not great. Okay. Oh yeah, this is one I've definitely had a lot of requests for in the past. So this is me working on a dupe or an alternative for Neutrogena's Hydro Boost Gel Cream. So if you look at the ingredients, you will probably recognize the emulsifier. It's Olive M1000, or at least it's got very, very similar inky to Olive M1000. So I'm like, all right, well, let's give that a try. And so this uses a combination of Olive M1000 kind of as a primary emulsifier with Cefamax Sen, which is a gelling agent that is pre-neutralized, which is really nice. A lot of carbomers, you have to adjust the pH afterwards because they're extremely acidic. So that's why in a lot of gel products, you'll see sodium hydroxide on the ingredient list. That's there to bring the pH back down after the carbomer does its thickening magic. Yeah, and then there's quite a lot of 1% low molecular weight hyaluronic acid stock in here, some vegetable glycerin, some dimethicone 350, some C12 to 15 alkyl benzoate, and then a product from TKB Trading called silicone gel, which had some inky overlap with the original ingredient list. And so this is really nice. I got this big note in here: do not microwave. So yeah, it will bubble up and overflow. So lessons learned, y'all. I feel like I've learned that lesson more times than I should have. Yeah, but so this is really quite nice. It's a lot more opaque than the Neutrogena product, which I did buy to kind of use and compare. And it feels really nice on the hands, super, super hydrating and whatnot. But I find that it feels really funny on the face. Like, I don't like the dry down of it on my face. It's just, I don't have a good descriptor for it. It just kind of feels weird. So this definitely needs more tweaking, but I am having fun with this. I've had a lot of requests for not only this product in particular as a dupe, but also for just kind of gel creams in general. So yeah, there we go. I'm gonna look over at the comments again. Something that can be used for the premature graying of hair. I'm afraid hair color is really not a thing that I have a lot of knowledge about. Sorry. It's a shame the HSCG canceled the event. Yeah, I agree. Says I hope that they'll consider doing lives at least. So yeah, I'm sad that it's canceled. I completely understand why, and it's for the best. What they are doing is they're calling it like their first ever social distancing conference. So if you are an HSCG member, you can log into their website at soapguild.org, and there's a bunch of presentations there. And so I did one as well, so you can get an exclusive presentation from me. There, and there's quite a few of them. So if you're a member, definitely check that out. Laneige lip mask. I love the Laneige lip mask, and oh my gosh, the ingredient list is crazy pants. It's so long. I do have an overnight lip mask that uses Hyalurlip, which is a sort of multi-ingredient that has some hyaluronic acid in it. It's designed for lip products. So I would check that out. That's the closest thing that I have at this point in time. I don't know if I'd ever really do anything very similar to the Laneige lip mask, just because it's a very complex product, but hey, never say never. Let's see here. Do you offer full bulk recipes on your Patreon pages? Math calculations are not my friend. I don't, but I do have a video and a blog post called How to Formulate with Spreadsheets that really walks you through how to do all of that. And especially now that I, for the last 2 years and change, I've been sharing all of my formulations and percentages. It's really, really easy to calculate them out, which is nice. Wish I had a science and chemistry teacher like you. Oh, thank you, Bonnie. Back in the 80s, it was so boring. Honestly, I remember the same thing about my my chemistry classes in high school. They weren't nearly, I feel like I would have been way, way more interested in them if we were looking at kind of real world applications rather than kind of like, look, we made a volcano. And now you're just like calculating equations out. Like I did chemistry in high school, but I did it well because I wanted to get a good grade, not because I found it to be fascinating at that point in time. Dara said she made my green tea face cream today, and you love it. We might have to get used to the smell. Well, I guess you learned something about maybe those essential oils that aren't your favorite, but thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to hear that you love it. Denise says she recently tried to make a hyaluronic acid hand sanitizer thickened with hydroxyethyl cellulose and got snot. Those jelly agents are so tricky. Yeah, the natural ones especially, the consistency can sometimes be less than desirable. Let's see here. Erin says, please do more of these live streams. They're awesome. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. And I definitely have plans for it. Some of the things, I'd like to do more of the ones like I did last week, where I kind of walk you through a simple formulation and some different variations on it. So if you have ideas for ones that you think would do well in a completely live setting, so that kind of means anything that really needs to be melted is probably not a great idea, because, you know, it takes time. And also I don't have a stove in my studio. I do that in my kitchen and carry things back and forth. But yeah, I was thinking cleansing oil could work really, really well. Let's see here. Oh yeah, here we go. So here's more things I've had more questions about. So these kind of started as being like be better projects, but they've taken they've taken so much of a diversion. I'm not sure I can call it a be better. It's so much of an evolution. So working on some different cream cleansers. So historically, I have found these tricky because they split, which is always a bummer. So this one includes a small percentage of xanthan gum, which is a thing I'm finding I'm very much in love with. Just a tiny percentage, 0.3. 0.5 is too much. 0.5, well, I'll show you a 0.5. It's really gross. And so this I've been testing since March, and so far so good. It is uniform, it's really gorgeous and gentle. And I took some nods actually from my cleansing conditioners for this formulation. So woohoo! Yeah, just I think you'll see some cleansing conditioner or creamy facial cleansers from me soon, because yeah, these are working out great. And then kind of speaking of creamy facial cleansers, another one I'm working on. So this was initially, there's two versions here, version 1 and version 2, initially inspired by the First Aid Beauty cream cleanser, but I didn't have most of the ingredients. I had some of the more important ones, so this is very much just kind of like it's gone along the garden path, and now we're just sort of at like inspired by. It's definitely not a dupe, but it is so far a really lovely cream cleanser. So version number 1, I'm nicknaming this bad boy Face Flubber. Way too thick. The oil phase is much too large, and I also put quite a lot of xanthan gum in here. Like, look at, like, it's like you could spread this on toast. Don't spread it on toast. It's gross. But like, oh, then that's that xanthan gum at 0.5 instead of 0.3%. It's just like, oh, it's not great. Works really, really well, cleanses really well. I actually found it to be way too strong. The active surfactant matter on this was, I think, around 17%, and it was way too much. Now I brought a towel in here because I knew I would be touching things and I want to get them off my hands. So yeah, that worked really, really well, but way too thick. So worked on dialing it down, and so this is the thinner version. So I've been testing this only for a few days now. And really liking it. So you can see it's significantly thinner than version 1. Lathers up just beautifully. Obviously, I'm not going to get much anything going on without any water on my hands. But you can see it's significantly less like bigger-like than the previous one. And yeah, I'm really, really liking it. I don't think that's going to be the final version. I do want to further reduce the active surfactant matter, and I think I actually want to pull the oil phase size up a little bit as well, because I think it's just a little thinner than I'd like. Yeah, so I'll go back to the chat here. We have some wonderful essential oil blend suggestions. Clementine and sweet vanilla. Oh yeah, that'll smell like creamsicle. Gorgeous. An oil-based cleanser. Yeah, no, I think a cleansing oil live stream would work really, really well, because we don't have to melt anything. Liquid soaps made with olive or coconut oil. I don't really make liquid soap. I've done it in the past, probably about 5 years ago, and it just never really inspired me. It never really kind of got me super excited. So I don't really, do liquid soap. But I'm sure there's tons of amazing resources online for other people who do it very, very well. Persephone's pomegranate. I'm glad you like xanthan gum. A lot of formulators poo-poo it, but it's the only thickener I have at the moment. I can understand why they poo-poo it, because as you can see, it does have the propensity to go kind of snotty on you. But at small amounts, loving it. can I add something like Penstia to a finished cream? So for anybody who doesn't know, Penstia powder is a fine white powder that you can add to pretty much anything. Like they recommend creams and makeups and all kinds of things, and it gives it a really gorgeous slippy feel. I don't usually recommend adding much of anything to finished products, just because you kind of don't know what you're dealing with. You don't fully know what's in there. You don't know if you're possibly going to be interfering with the preservative system. If it's a product that's sold as a lotion base from somewhere like, I know New Directions Aromatics sells quite a lot of them, where it's basically manufactured so that you can add some fancy things to it, that could be a good place too. But I wouldn't do it with something that you bought at the drugstore. Can you add exfoliant to the creamy cleanser? Absolutely, you can. Absolutely. I had a couple of remarks about hand sanitizer. I'm not going to be sharing a hand sanitizer formulation. I feel uncomfortable sharing a formulation for something that somebody's health could be so dependent on. I would recommend, if you are going to make one, that you follow the World Health Organization's formulations, which I linked, I think, in the hand wash video that I did. So take a look at that. And something else to take a look at too is, I know a lot of our local distilleries have pivoted and have basically started producing like an 80% ethanol hand sanitizer following the WHO's formulations. That also includes a small amount of glycerin, some hydrogen peroxide, and kind of water to 100%. And so those are starting to become very readily available here in Calgary. I picked one up from Troubled Monk for $2.50 for a can. As kind of I got beer along with it too. So it's $2.50 if you bought beer. Woo! That's my kind of gift with purchase. And so yeah, take a look at those as well. Have you ever smelled Estee Lauder's Nutritious line? I have not. And I probably won't anytime soon because I can't go to the beauty counter and smell it, unfortunately. Do you have any ideas on how to use Sucragel? I only found one recipe. I've used Sucragel before, and I found it to be quite finicky over time. So the recipe that you're probably talking about that's on my website uses Sucragel, and I made that a bunch of times right around the time that I shared the formulation, and everything was the bomb diggity. And then I've tried it again since, and it's been very temperamental, even following exactly the same thing that I did before. So it's kind of a pain in the patoot. Now, I know that Botanical Formulations has at least one post on using Sucragel, so I would recommend checking that out because I believe she's worked with it a heck of a lot more than I have. What would you rate your channel in terms of age appropriate? Well, it's age appropriate for any age. I don't curse or do anything that's really like R-rated, but it's just a matter of whether or not like children would get it. Like a 5-year-old probably isn't all that interested in making shampoo, and I wouldn't have a 5-year-old working with like powdered surfactants, for instance. So let's see here. Years ago, you said you'd never do sunscreens. You still feel the same way? Yes, I do. I wrote a big long blog post on it 2 or 3 years ago, and yeah, that I reread it recently, and I was like, yes, yep, absolutely, still on board with that. Oh, because you're 13, you want to know? Well, I think, yeah, I'm perfectly age appropriate for a 13-year-old. I do wonder if you can get a hold of the ingredients. Oftentimes they're only available online, and then you need a credit card, and 13-year-olds, at least when I was 13, couldn't get credit cards. Yeah, I agree with Bonnie. Adult supervision would be needed depending on what is being made. Some things would be really simple, like a cleansing oil you could easily make without, I think, adult supervision. Like if you can make yourself a grilled cheese sandwich, if you can cook, make yourself like a spaghetti sauce or something, I would 100% trust you to make things like a cleansing oil or bath bombs, lotions. Once we start to get into things where, you might want to be wearing a dust mask, anything with sodium hydroxide and kind of like soap-based thing, you want adult supervision, I think. But yeah, it's been a while since I was 13, so I'm not fully remembering what it's like to be 13 either. Sorry. This one, I tried shredding up some soap and then pressing it. It's kind of interesting, like milled soap. This was a rosé bar soap. I'll have to play with this a little bit later, or a little bit more later, but I was thinking it could be really neat to make up a batch of soap, not let it age, shred it as soon as it's reasonably firm, and then, of course, with all that additional surface area, the shreds would dry out a lot faster, and then try repressing it, which is, I believe, more or less how milling soap works. So kind of fun. So that's kind of what this is. As it is, you can kind of see chunks of soap falling off of it, so it's definitely not perfect. What else do we have here? Oh, sort of bath truffle-y type things. So I made a bunch of different versions of these. These are actually going to be coming out on the blog pretty darn soon here, in a significantly more polished and better manner than these. But I thought it'd be kind of cool to show you some of the different flops. So this one was way too liquid, so it poured really beautifully, but it has so much cocoa butter in it that doesn't really melt well in things. Then these ones were all much too dry, and you can kind of see that like they're really chunky and powdery, and I can see them just like dropping stuff all over the table right now. But yeah, the idea is that these are kind of like the love child between a bath bomb and a bath oil. So you can just kind of crumble them under running water, and you get fizzy and bubbles, and you get loveliness in the water. So before the end of the month, you'll see a formulation for something like this, which is pretty awesome, and I'm really happy with kind of the presentation of it as well. Let's see here. Oh, a dishwashing brick. So this bad boy is just shedding all the time. The idea is that this is going to be kind of a solid version of the super concentrated dishwashing paste that I shared. I know Ariane also made like a zero waste dishwashing brick. And so this is primarily sodium cocoa sulfate, but I also added a bunch of washing soda and then kind of held it together with some carrageenan and some water. Now there's no humectants in here and no fat, so oh my gosh, it is really, really, really drying out, and I'm kind of like wondering if I drop this, if it would just poof. I haven't tested this yet, but I have been monitoring it as it dries, and it has dried really, really, really rapidly compared to other kind of pressed Syndet products I've made. So this needs some testing, but I think it's kind of cool. Let's see here. Happy Easter from Arizona. Hello, Arizona. Is there a formulation for a clay scrub mask? Can you add exfoliants to a cleansing clay balm? Yeah, so I have it's called like a facial polish, winter solstice face polish on my website. So maybe check that out. That's got some exfoliants in it. And I usually find that most clay masks do offer a pretty good amount of exfoliation as they are. You don't really need to add an additional exfoliant because the clay itself is quite a good exfoliant, especially after it dries. And you can kind of rinse it off, and you're generally kind of gently massaging it off and into your skin. Denise, more deodorants and foundation. I do actually have a foundation that isn't actually that new. I believe I started working on it in like September 2018, but I recently refound it and started using it again. And it occurred to me that it's very similar to Glossier's Perfecting Skin Tint, I think is what they call it. So I kind of pulled that out and started using it. I was like, oh, hey, how come I never shared this? So that'll probably be coming out sometime soon, a good almost 2 years after I started working on it. So woohoo! And deodorants. I'm working on some deodorants. I've been playing with a couple different actives. Zinc ricinoleate and potassium alum have been the two big ones. I found potassium alum to be more effective. That's kind of what's in those crystal deodorants. But yeah, I still don't have anything to actually share on that front. Liquid shampoo. So this is coming out soon as well. I have made so many batches of liquid shampoo, and it has been a pain in the patoot to create something that cleans my hair but doesn't leave it feeling utterly disgusting. Just really like too clean, like dry and gritty and grippy and just so this is the result of many, many months and many, many batches of experimenting on liquid shampoo. So we will have a liquid shampoo coming out soon. Do you know Sol de Janeiro's Bum Bum Cream? I know it in that I have a sample of it and I love the way it smells, but I haven't done much looking into it beyond that. Ooh, this one. This is coming out soon as well. I adore it. So this is a hand cream based on a First Aid Beauty project or product that I think this would be like $100 worth of cream by volume for what they sell it for. So I love it. It's huge fan. I actually just recently made a 200-gram batch and gave it to one of my friends who is a nurse. So I'm looking forward to her feedback on it as well. But I've been using this a lot. I have one tub by my bed and then one by my computer, and it's amazing. So love this stuff. Stay tuned. It'll be out later this week, actually. Dishwashing powder. Well, I think generally speaking, the ingredients that are in that dishwashing brick would probably work as a powder, especially if you didn't have a press. Um, a deodorant, I would really like to see a deodorant with no baking soda that actually works. Me too. That's why I haven't shared one yet, because I haven't made one that actually works. What about a liquid conditioner? I have a lot of liquid conditioner, cream conditioner formulations on my website. So if you go to humblebeeandme.com, take a look at those, because there's lots of them. All right, and here's the last of my stack of goodies. This is an ongoing project at creating a micellar water that doesn't use the PEG6 capric and caprylic triglycerides, because I know that they're not super, super widely available. So I'm working at either finding an alternative that works on its own, or finding a way to make multiple alternatives all work reasonably well. So this is taking some doing. These all work to some degree and feel nice on the skin. I just don't feel like they're as effective as I would like them to be. I've been comparing them to a commercial product that I have that I got at those aside before I just knock them all over. I've been comparing them to a commercial product from La Roche-Posay, where I'll like do the same makeup on both eyes and then use different micellar water on different cotton pads and then kind of see how much comes off. And I'm finding that these ones just are not performing as well as I want them to. So still working on cajoling that formulation into performing the way I would like it to. But I think, fingers crossed, I'm onto something. Yeah. Denise made a mention here of laundry soap. So I'm really, really hesitant to do a laundry thing. It's one thing if you make a batch of hand soap and you don't like the way it feels on your hands, or a batch of lotion, you don't like the way it feels on your face. And it's another thing if I instruct you how to make a batch of laundry detergent and you ruin all your clothes with it. So I'm pretty hesitant about that. I also live in a rental home. I don't own the machines, and I don't want to be sending my experimental laundry detergent through a machine I don't own, in a home I don't own. And heck, I'd probably want to do it even less if I did own it, just because the possibilities of those things going wrong, I just not going near that. Ideas for a moringa cleansing balm. I probably honestly wouldn't really put moringa oil in a cleansing balm because it's really expensive, and cleansing balms are a wash-off product. If you're going to do it, it would probably be like maybe 2 to 5% is a like, yay, this is moringa in it, but you're not really going to notice that it's moringa. So just take a look at like any of my recent cleansing balm formulations, swap out like 2 to 5% of the like fractionated coconut oil or the inexpensive cleansing oil or oil that makes up the bulk of it, swap that out for moringa oil and ta-da. But yeah, it seems like a waste for such a nice oil that would, I think, shine a lot better in a leave-on product rather than a wash-off one. Substitute for Silagel. I haven't worked with Silagel that much. Different gelling agents would be where I would start. And if you're, from what I'm remembering, what I've read about Silagel, part of its appeal is that it has a very synthetic-like feel without being synthetic. So if you're not opposed to synthetics, you might take a look at something like Sepamax Sen, which is unfortunately really hard to buy right now because a lot of people are buying it to make hand sanitizer with. But I think Lotion Crafter has some, though they're limiting the amount that you can purchase. And Making Cosmetics has a product called like Gel Maker PH that one of my patrons shared with me, and it has the same inky and a very similar description. So I suspect it is a similar thing. Let's see here. Recipes for a cooling effect on the skin. Menthol is and peppermint will give a cooling effect on the skin. Just make sure you are watching maximum usage rates so you don't really irritate your skin. For vegan cleansing balm, which wax is better? I would say don't use wax. Use a fatty thickener like stearic acids or cetyl alcohol. That's what I use in my cleansing balms as thickeners. I don't really like true waxes. They end up being quite tacky in wash-off products like that. And you cannot use those instead of emulsifying wax. You're using that instead of wax to thicken it. You still need an emulsifier in there to make it wash off. Soraya, what is your testing process for products that will go on your blog? How long do you test and use things before you post it? New DIY blogger here. Well, hi and welcome to the DIY blogging world. Always good to have more voices. It depends. It depends on the product. So like with this lotion, it's using an emulsifier I'm pretty familiar with and have tested fairly extensively. Um, and a basic formulation structure that I'm also quite comfortable with. So this, not like a lotion like this, not terribly long. But for something like these cream cleansers where I know that they have a tendency to split, like I'm going to want to watch this for quite a while before, like weeks to months. Some of these other ones that we've been talking about are upwards of a year and a half, 2 years old. For anything where I'm hoping it's going to be self-preserving, like this is, I think this was 7 months. And so if my plan was to share this relatively soon, but only really say that I'm confident in its shelf stability for like maybe 3 to 4 months. So it depends on the product, and it depends on how familiar I am with the kind of the category, I suppose. Is there a safe way to preserve clays? A lot of that's going to be like, yes, definitely there is, because plenty of companies do it. Doing it at home can be a bit more challenging. The things like the concentration, like how much clay, like if you look at I've got a couple shampoo bar recipes that have clays in them. They're perfectly shelf stable, perfectly fine. But there's also a lot of other things going on in there. It's a low water content formulation. It has a high concentration of anionic surfactants, and I use Liquid Germol Plus, which is a pretty sturdy preservative. So yes, it can be done. In any given formulation, you're going to have to do your own tests to find out if it is working. An enzyme mask. I think the only enzyme thing that I have right now is a cleaning product. So I'm not set up for that at this moment. I'm not opposed to the idea, just don't have the things for it. An acne mask. I could talk about acne a lot because it is a thing that I have definitely struggled with over the years. And I feel like I've finally learned some things that help. Some of the places I've learned the most about it is this awesome blog called simpleskincarescience.com. I highly, highly, highly recommend checking out his blog and reading through his content. It is amazing. It's incredibly well researched. It is astonishingly thorough. So definitely check him out for that. How do you stabilize body butter in the summertime? I recommend reading an FAQ I have on my website called Will This Melt in Hot Weather? It goes into that in kind of more detail. And hello from South Florida. Please enjoy that sunshine and warmth for me. With magnesium, okay, I make a great deodorant. This is from Jessica. Without baking soda, with magnesium hydroxide and neem. And so one of the things that I've always wondered about magnesium hydroxide, and haven't really worked with it much, it has a higher pH than baking soda. So I've always just kind of wondered why it's often touted as a less irritating alternative to baking soda when it has a higher pH. Haven't done a ton of work with it, but it's just sort of a thing I looked into. I was like, oh, what's the pH? And I was like, oh, it's very high. That's weird. Something with chemical exfoliants. Chemical exfoliants, so things like alpha hydroxy acids and beta hydroxy acids, have a pretty precise pH ranges that different ones require, and I honestly just don't feel all that qualified for that. So I just not, yeah, that's kind of why you haven't seen anything like that from me. You consider talking about mixing preservatives and which are best for what. I am still learning a lot in that realm, and I don't feel at all qualified to teach about how to like blend your own preservatives. The more I learn about them, the more I learn that I don't know much of anything. At least that's definitely what it feels like. So yeah, that's kind of, there's so much of a science behind creating preservatives and different ingredients functioning, offering protection against different types of spoilage and functioning best in different pH environments. And it's just, there's so much to know. So I'm working on learning lots, but I definitely don't feel like I am qualified to teach any of that sort of thing right now. So I continue to recommend using pre-blended, professionally developed and manufactured complete preservatives for your things. Okay, so we're at almost an hour here, which I didn't think would happen this time around. I did not think that I could fill an hour here, but you guys have asked a lot of really, really great questions. I'm going to give you about another minute here to kind of pop some questions in the live chat before we wrap up. Let's see here. I'll tell you a little bit about what my Easter weekend is kind of looking like right now. Obviously spending pretty much all of it at home other than dog walks. But I did make some seriously bomb diggity cookies yesterday using the New York Times chocolate chip cookie recipe. So if you kind of Google that, I did use all-purpose flour because they do have you blend bread flour and pastry flour, and I don't have both of those types of flour right now. They have varying gluten contents. In case you're kind of wondering what the difference is, bread flour is going to be a higher gluten content flour, often called a hard flour, whereas pastry flour is a soft flour. It has a lower gluten content, made from different types of wheat, and so all-purpose flour kind of blends the two of them to create something that has a very sort of reliable performance and works well for both bread and for pastries. But if you were really very dedicated about one or the other, you'd probably have one of both, which is a thing I have done in the past, but not at this point in time. And then I swapped out half of the chocolate chips for some Reese's peanut butter eggies. So that's very nice. And then the plan for tonight is to make burritos and make some tortillas from scratch. So it should be a nice diversion. Persephone's Farmer says, I've been baking cookies like crazy. Oh yeah, Doubletree just released their secret recipe for the signature cookies. I just saw that from the Hilton Doubletree and I have saved it. And I'm not going to make it like today because I still have cookie dough left over in the fridge from the cookies I made yesterday. Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, cookies, man, they're the best. It's pretty hard to get flour here, but I found a 10-kilo bag of it at Costco recently, so I'm set for a while. Danny said, I'm going to ask about how Lottie is. Lottie seems to be doing pretty well. She is definitely enjoying having us around all the time, but seems really kind of confused about why she's not getting all the attention out in public she used to get. People coming up and saying hi to her. It's not really okay right now for that. So she's just kind of like, how come no one loves me anymore? Poor Muffin. Oh, Jessica just made s'mores cookies. Oh, that sounds so good. Oh. If you've never made graham crackers from scratch before, that's a very fun thing to do. I'm trying to remember where it was that I found a recipe where they really actually tasted just like proper graham crackers. And when I lived in Australia, and you can't buy like North American style graham crackers in Australia, or at least not easily. And so I made graham crackers from scratch. And then also their marshmallows are a lot different than our marshmallows. So I made North American style marshmallows from scratch. And then I showed all my Australian friends what s'mores were, and they lasted about 8.5 seconds. And yes, Lottie may indeed need some counseling from the shock of the world no longer flooding her with affection every time she leaves the house, but I think she'll be okay. And I did try to give her a DIY haircut, and that's definitely not a thing I'm any good at. So apologies, dog. She might need therapy for that too. And all right, I think I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for joining me on your Easter Sunday for a bit of a chat about the things I'm making. I love hearing about the things that you're making as well, be it cookies or deodorant or anything else. But yeah, thank you so much. Have a lovely Sunday and stay safe, stay sane, wash your hands, all that. Have a lovely day.